Hi everyone and welcome back to Bobble Pod. We hope you enjoyed the last episode. Might have gone on a bit of a tangent there talking about Meta and going into the world of Elon Musk and Twitter, but it kind of gives you a flavor of the podcasts that we're running. This episode is going to be more focused on almost like a two-part series. First part, mainly talking about Google and SEO, and then the second episode will go and deep dive into PPC. But as always, like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, click on the subscribe button, the bell notification button. I can't promise any rewards or stuff for it, but it's just been nice to know that you're liking and subscribing and listening to our podcast. So in this episode, I just want to start talking about what is the future of Google and what does it actually mean. I was at a event in Manchester at the Etihad. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan, so we can get away with it. My producer's looking at me now thinking, come on, man, you got to get away. You got to be a bit more calm. If we could pan to him, it'd be absolutely hilarious.
You're fine. Continue as you are. It's fine.
So Josh was there, who's behind the camera. I actually did do that joke inside the Etihad. There was like a couple empty seats. We had 78 people there, but some people wanted to stand and I feel like some people didn't want to sit, but it was a good turnout. But to get back to why I was there, we were exhibiting at the Marketing Showcase in Manchester, and we're going to be doing a few this year. And the topic I was talking about was the future of Google in a digital age, which went down really, really well. The full talk is actually on our YouTube at Bobble Digital if you want to listen to it. And if you've not attended a Marketing Showcase event, not that I'm plugging them, do attend. A lot of people attend there. There's a lot of stands. There's a lot of companies out there from a tech point of view, as well as companies like us at marketing point of view. Some great seminars that are there, which is really good. I was there and fortunate to also have, Claire from Trio, one of the ex-hosts of Bobble Pod. She was talking about improving your conversion rate on your website. So very useful topics. And it's a good one because it made me deep dive more into Google, because at that talk, I only really had like 20 minutes, but I've got a little bit more time on the podcast. I can deep dive into a few more conversations, and I'm going to split it up into two. First one, really give a viewpoint on what is, the state of Google and SEO. And then on the other one, talk a bit more about, the future of PPC, which are the two key services we offer at Bobble Pod. Callum's looking at me because prior to this, things were said about Google in terms of my personal view, which I won't be sharing to too much detail. I love how he's laughing. I just like getting a reaction out of him. But one quote I have, and I've said this in previous podcasts, is Google is a mountain. Can't be moved, but it can be climbed. And there's two ways to do that. You either do that through the easy route, which is taking the escalator up to the top of the ski slope. And we call that pay-per-click advertising, PPC. Or you can take the harder route, but it's more rewarding, which is search engine optimization, which is basically you're walking up the mountain, but it takes longer to get to the top. But once you're at the top, you're at the top. There's literally no coming down. Well, eventually you might, if you stop focusing on your SEO services. But that's the principal idea of what the talk was about. But the key thing about what's happening is, I'm going to give some stats right now about Google. In terms of search engine marketing share in 2022, and this data is coming from starcounter.com, is 92% of all search queries conducted across all search engine providers are done through the internet giant Google. In other words, more than 9 out of 10 internet users search for information online do so through Google. That's a lot, right? If you're not basically using Google, you're missing out incredibly. So basically, it's not just how you use Google, and it's how you use its platforms. And the way the platforms have changed is significantly. Just to give you an idea of that, Bing, which is its closest competitor, accounts for 2.96% of search queries globally and market share in 2022. So it's low. It has a monopoly. It is the biggest search engine and the only relevant search engine on the market. After that, you've got YouTube, which is essentially a search engine, and that's owned by Google. And the two work well in tandem, particularly from a paid perspective, which we'll discuss, in terms of how you can maximize channels and revenue points from that perspective. Actually, on YouTube, there was a stat that came out. I believe it was 54, 56% of people that are consuming YouTube content is informational, which is why we do this podcast as a vodcast and upload it to our YouTube channel, because we get views and we get relevant views. And although we might not be as famous as, let's say, Gary Vee or any other podcasts out there, when clients do come to Bobble Digital and they go through our website, they see that not only that we have our bite-sized events, which again is another educational, informative event that we host here in Leeds, they also say, oh, I actually listened to your podcast. I saw your podcast. I actually saw your YouTube and vodcast of Bobble Pod. It's really exciting and interesting. And some of the things you talked about in a couple of episodes we're looking for, the information was there. So, Google is a platform for you to be able to search for anything you want. And now over 9 out of 10 people are using the platform. But if you're looking for topics around, Google, SEO and PPC, it's a platform for us to be able to get directly to you. Directly to you in your homes and get as much information out from us. And that's the whole point of the podcast. I know when Josh and Callum are here, they're like, we learn so much every time you talk. And it's not that I'm just talking gibberish. I'm actually talking on experience and actual real stats. So, I go out onto these platforms. I watch YouTube videos. I watch other podcasts and vodcasts. I'm searching and Googling and prepping for this podcast and give you information to make sure I've got the most relevant, up-to-date data. But then I'm giving my personal expertise of being in the industry for over 10 years, of having done that and what that means. But, Google has changed a lot. I laugh because I did have a joke, which I didn't share at Marketing Showcase, which I won't share here because Callum will literally stop the broadcasting. If anyone want to know what I think about is I'm going to say Ricky Gervais Golden Globes. And Callum's laughing because he knows straight away. If you don't know that, just look at some of Ricky Gervais's jokes in Golden Globes. So yeah, Google's changed a lot, but I have a personal issue with Google. I mean, yes, that's weird coming from someone who runs, digital marketing agency in Leeds that predominantly offers services in PPC and SEO. But I do have an issue with Google in terms of where it's going. Callum, you were talking about having recently watched iRobot.
It was a bit of a going down memory lane as such, watching that, because I watched it as a kid and then I haven't seen it for like 20 odd years. So I rewatched it the other day and it's quite telling of how futuristic I thought it was and how slightly real it's becoming.
Basically, the guy who owned the robots is Elon Musk, and the AI behind it is Google. So you're basically competing against two people. That's how I view it, and it's relevant now because Google is an AI bot, and the problem I have with what they're doing with Google is they're automating everything to a point where I feel it's having a detrimental impact on it. And the reason they're doing it is because they can, and they know that they have more than 9 out of 10 people using their platform for searching, so they can dictate what people do or how platforms like Google are used and how platforms like Google Ads are used. And that's the issue I have with Google, is that Google is not taking in consideration niche companies, not taking into consideration agencies anymore. You're a profit-driven company now. Everything you do is about revenue. And it's not like you're short of revenue, Google. When I have a stat here. Let me look at actual total global ad spend here. Data shows that Google's ad revenue has been increasing year on year in 2022, which brought in $146.92 billion from their advertising platform, Google Ads. Google's yearly revenue was a grand total of $181.69 billion, and that was 2022. And I can guarantee you that's well over $250 billion, if not more, in 2021 and 2022 figures, because the pandemic forced us all to go online. And more people were spending more and more money on Google Ads, especially e-commerce retailers, getting more into Google Shopping and more into ads. So you're not short of money, Google, and you're optimizing and you're changing your platform to be very, very money driven to benefit you. And the problem I have, and my clients have this, which is why I share this, is my clients come up to me saying, someone from Google called, talking about Google Ads and how they can optimize our account, but obviously they've got us as an agency. And it is a call center in India, because you know it's a call center in India because you can tell the accent. And don't tell me I don't know what the Indian accent sounds like. And not to say that's a bad thing. They know what they're doing. They're very good at what I would call, when you go to an IT company, first level support. So if you have an issue, they're very good at telling you to turn your laptop on and off again and restarting it. But that is essentially the value you get out. And it's really sad, because I used to praise and talk about how good Google support used to be. Just during my time at Intermarketing, I was able to get hold of, when I moved from Cara to Intermarketing, I started setting up the media team there, setting up Google. I was able to get hold of an account manager to help Intermarketing grow and become a Google partner agency. Now that doesn't even exist anymore. You get calls every 3 months from this support team. And it's not the same person anymore, because 3 months later, you get someone else call talking about the same ad account, and a client's getting frustrated, and you can't unfortunately turn it off either. It's like with the auto recommendations, you have to implement a couple of auto recommendations to actually get your Google partner status. This is the problem with Google. You are taking away control from people because it suits you financially. And you're kind of ruining what is the best search engine in the world, because more than 9 out of 10 people use it. That is my problem with Google right now, is that you're automating everything. You're oversimplifying it, like getting rid of expanded text ads. There was no need for that, because you want to put in responsive search ads and have more headlines in there, more descriptions there, and have control over which ones. Yes, you can pin certain headlines in there, but you know, you've got 5.6 billion searches a day coming out of Google ads, and 63% of people globally have clicked on a Google ad. So don't tell me your platform's not, and they know this because Google have the stats. So the changes they make is, I think, is profit and money driven, not user focused. And I think they're losing their way. And I've got clients that are getting frustrated with Google and looking at what else can we do. And unfortunately, the only other thing is video, but YouTube, Google own that because it's YouTube. But that's where I kind of give recommendation and commendment to platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok that are coming, you know, a very long way. Okay, iOS 14 hasn't been great for a lot of people, but, you know, video is more immersive and more beneficial. But I'm not having a rant at Google, even though it might come across as a rant for the last 5 odd minutes. But Google, please get your act together. I would welcome anyone from Google to come on this podcast as a guest, and I will be more than happy to challenge you on the issues you're doing and tell me that it's not profit driven with the changes you're making on your platform. For you and not, because the people that call you, the changes and implementations that they recommend are so basic. All they're doing is reading the recommendations from within the Google Ads platform. And I'm like, yes, I'm already aware of that. And no, that's not relevant because A, the client has no more budget, or B, increasing the budget to that ad group and keyword, which has lower conversions, has zero impact on the client in terms of an ROI, especially if they're an e-commerce platform or they're very return on investment driven, which a lot of people are. And you've got to consider Google is bottom of the funnel. If you've got someone on Google searching for your services, searching for your products, and you're not on that platform, being there at that lower version of their, you know, intent to purchase in that journey, missing out. And that's why I say you've got to be missing out. And why does it work? Some more stats. Google Ads. The average return on investment is 8 to 1. 8 times a potential return on investment. That's the average stats. The average conversion rate on Google is 4.4%. And it works. Google knows this. We know this. We advocate our clients to be on Google Ads as a platform, which is why in this podcast I'm focusing, obviously, talking about Google, my problems with Google, the benefits of platforms like Google Ads. And next we'll talk about SEO, which, you know, it's more Google's algorithm and AI and elements. But the thing I want to talk about how Google has changed is it's how you're doing your text ads. So if I want anyone to walk away from this podcast and learn something and implement something, is there's a great example from Olay, which I showcased in the marketing showcase talk, which was how when someone searched for dark circle under eyes, Olay's text ad headline used to be Olay eye concern and treatment products for around the eye. Used to be very product focused, call to action focus, this is the product information. Now, if you do the same search, dark circles under eyes, the actual text ad headline changes to what causes under eye circles, ? Easy lifestyle tips from Olay. Have you seen the change there? Because the way you as users use Google has changed. We put in questions to Google and we expect answers. And the way Google Ads works in terms of how you need to be more, I'd say, more creative and expansive with your text ads, especially with responsive search ads where you can have up to, 12, 16 headlines, and which ones to use is you've got to provide more information. It's become, it used to be where platforms like Instagram used to be very discovery focused and Google was very e-commerce, let's say purchase focused. Whereas I'd say Instagram is very purchase focused and Google is now discovery focused. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok are more purchase led now. Platforms like Google very discovery led, because when you're searching for products or services, your text ads aren't just going to say, 50% sale, because as consumers, we want value. We want to know we're buying a product that's going to give us what we need. So if you're buying a cosmetic product like what Olay were offering, where you're searching for dark circles under eyes, it's saying, well, what are the underlying causes and how can you treat that? And I guarantee you, when you click on that ad, that page, that product page, it will have the product, but the product description will be, brief, but it will talk about how this product helps with the problems you're looking for, what it serves. It's really, 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 really good. The other things I want you to really focus on when it comes to PPC is the future of PPC. So we've talked about automation and iRobot, haven't we? And essentially that's what's going to happen. The use of artificial intelligence that Google has, and that's another bugbear I have, because I heard so many people have the issue with the financial verification form on Google Ads when they're not even offering finance, but because of the certain keywords they were offering. We had a client that was told by FCA that did not need to be FCA regulated for what they were doing, providing credit reports and company reports. But Google turned around and said, no, you have to be. So Google, are you FCA? Can someone explain that to me? If the FCA themselves say that they don't need to be. And you know why that form doesn't complete? Because again, it's a bot. It's an AI element that takes your responses. And I'm not going to say who I spoke to at Google, because they're a good mate and, source. They talked about how it was a show inside Google with the whole forms. And this is a problem you have. You've got a multi-billion-dollar company that can't even do a simple form, which impacted so many companies. I get it if you're financial or you're an e-commerce and you're offering Klarna and Divide By and you're FCA regulated, that's fine. But what about companies that weren't offering that got impacted by it? And as a result, their conversion numbers have dropped off, their cost per acquisition has dropped off, their conversion rate has dropped off, because you're hindering them based on a principle that you've set that in most cases isn't the case. It reached out to the mass, not to the niches. But yeah, overall, I want you to automation is going to be a key element of the future of PPC. You've got smart bidding, which has come into place. And again, this is where Google's going. All automation, all having more control, and you literally looking at the results and them telling you what to do. Responsive search, as I've already talked about. Again, we're in May. This podcast will come out in a couple of weeks once it's, edited and produced. But, by June, expanded text ads cease to exist. So we've not even been doing expanded text ads at all this year. As an agency, we've just been focusing on responsive search ads. And the only way to stand out is by having a very, very good copywriter on your team. And the other thing is to start focusing more on video. So, 80% of all consumers, 82% of all consumer internet traffic will come from video by 2022. We're in 2022 now. These are stats. So including video ads in your PPC marketing strategy is going to be effective for one simple reason. You can capture a large pool of audience. You can, hit more of that discovery informational stuff, which is what we're doing with this podcast, which is why we record it. It's a video element. We can create snippets from it and we can use that in different ways for people. So wrapping up, your focus for Google should be, looking out for what the automation trends are. What you should be focusing on is, if you're struggling with Google ads, you need to be looking at your keyword research, the copywriting of your text ads, your landing page content, because that's going to impact your, quality score of your ads, your ad strength overall. If you're struggling with conversions, look at the bounce rate in Google Analytics from, the actual Google ads to the campaign, and actually the conversion rate within the platform of that, and start investing and spending time learning campaign automation, because it's in line with the algorithm and what's working. So that's the first series of my little slight rant of Google and explaining how Google ads in particular is going. The next talk I'm going to be doing, which will be launched next week, is going to be more in depth about SEO statistics and stats and what that means. I hope you found this really useful. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us across our YouTube and all our podcast channels. We do also have a website, www.bobblepod.co.uk, which we're revamping as well. So by the time this comes out, you should see some cool elements on that. So yeah. Thank you. That's me, Manny Singh, #Mr. Bobble, doing our second podcast of the season 3.